You've been here for almost 4 months now. What's been making all of that noise outside your window? Who's been standing there, waiting to be listened to?
Summer comes to multiply, to multiply. Summer comes to multiply. To multiply.
That New York noise. A day in the life of a street performer.
Art has to be honest in order to be real. You can't try to be something that you're not. And there are a lot of people that when they're making stuff, they're trying to be something that they're not. When I'm out playing, I feel like it's very honest.
Welcome to Manhattan Mini Storage, a storage unit relatively close to Washington Square Park. Every weekend, Colin Huggins comes to begin his day at work.
Now, I designed this specifically so it's something that I can do completely by myself because when I first tried doing this, I had the piano in my apartment in Brooklyn. And I got my roommate to help me out to bring it into the city. But I realized if I was going to try and do this for a living, I needed to cut all of the fees involved. This is going to be tough. Shoot, because there's a clip there. Sorry. Ah, God damn it. Sorry about that.
Colin is from Decatur, Georgia, and started learning music when he was 12 years old, starting out on the guitar. By the time he was 16, he decided to switch to piano, saying, "I liked how one instrument could be so powerful." It's very uncommon, though, for a pianist, or really any musician, to start his musical career at 16 years old.
I started when I was 16, so by the time I was 18, it was time for college. I still had a lot to learn. A kid, really passionate, but working at a fairly low level. I also didn't know exactly what my goals were. And I think back then, if you asked me what my goals were, I think I would have been kind of unrealistic. To be a concert pianist, I would have had to have learned tons of music. From the very moment I started playing, I would have had to have been learning really difficult music.
Oh man, this is amazing.
The secret is revealed.
Yeah, I want to take a picture.
As of now, Colin street performs in Washington Square Park, but has performed in Times Square, the 14th Street Union Square subway station, and Father Demo Park. Everything began about 8 years ago when Colin, then 25 years old, moved from Boston to Brooklyn. He had been working as a ballet accompanist for American Ballet Theatre and as music director for Joffrey Ballet. But one weekend he gave it all up to finally perform and compose his own music. So, how did you become a street performer exactly?
I don't know. It didn't really happen overnight. I was living in this area called Ridgewood. It's right on the Brooklyn-Queens line, on the L train, and I was living out there with my roommate, and he and I were just talking about different ways to get your art out into the world. And I tried doing shows and doing lots of other things. And, I was a ballet accompanist at the time, and I was really getting sick of it.
Why were you getting sick of it?
No, it's so funny. People always ask that. I wasn't making art. I wanted to be in front of audiences, moving people. I saw that performance by Vladimir Horowitz, the Return to Moscow performance, and people were sitting there listening to him and crying and yelling and just full of energy and just very moved by what he was doing.
When Colin did perform in the 14th Street Union Square subway station, he had been part of a team of performers. But because of police regulations, Colin's group left and moved above ground to fresher air. Nowadays, Colin is still hassled by cops. Receiving a ticket almost daily is part of a street performer's life. But as Colin puts it, tourism accounts for half of the city's income. People come to New York City for street culture, and park overseers don't like the crowds street performers bring, or the untaxed money given to street performers. Colin states, "I would bet 50% of tourists who come to New York City come to see street performers." Still, Colin continues to push his piano to Washington Square Park every weekend, making a living. Colin's best experience to date?
There's a singer here named Michael David who's been singing in the park for years, and I was like, dude, if you and I start a show, we will tear this place apart. There were just a few nights where we just had everything together, and we ended the night with Bohemian Rhapsody.
This is the real life. This is just fantasy. Caught in a landslide. Escape from reality.
But boy, it was just like I was just like glowing for a full week after that happened.
Nothing really matters. Anyone can see. Nothing really matters. Nothing really matters to me. And anyway the wind blows.
As you can imagine, Colin's piano busking was written about in many New York daily newspapers, but Colin reflects on when the New York Times did a piece on him in 2008 titled "The Real Piano Man."
And so the day the article came out, I went to play there with a buddy of mine who was visiting from Atlanta. And there were just tons of people there because it was in the New York Times. So all these people were coming and taking pictures of me and asking for my autograph. It felt like I was a celebrity. I kind of don't like it when you get attention just because of media. It's a little fake to me. I prefer it when you get attention just because you're really good and people you know, the show that I started with Michael David, like, we attracted people this summer of 2010, not because people knew who we were, but just because we were really good. We made a great show. And, I don't know, I guess it feels more pure that way.
It takes a lot of courage to just be. In a world where nobody pretty much is being, everybody is trying to be like something rather than be. To walk around being is really the most excellent thing.
In order to truly understand tribal Baroque, you have to understand where it is Thoth and Leela Angelique come from. Although he prefers to be addressed as Thoth, Stefan Kaufmann was born in Manhattan and later grew up in St. Albans, Queens. He began studying violin at age 8 and eventually auditioned and was accepted into the LaGuardia High School of Music and Arts. After graduating, his family moved to San Francisco, and Stefan began to study at San Francisco State. But after Stefan's mother was racially discriminated against in the San Francisco Symphony as the first black woman timpanist, Stefan was disheartened about music. He then studied at San Diego State, majoring in astronomy, but soon thereafter he became depressed and eventually suicidal, almost overdosing on pills. In that life or death moment, he decided he had two options. He could die, or let it all out.
Showing my emotions, which is what the performance is all about, showing who I am clearly, was not the way I was when I was young. It was hiding everything.
In my imagination, I could create environments that things were a lot different. I invented a land called the Festad, which had its own legends and history and language. Later, this became the basis for the opera that I perform in the tunnel.
So why do you guys use it at the beginning of all your performances?
It's a wonderful focus tool. Focus tools are really important to life.
After this life-changing moment, Stefan's street performing career began in the Metropolitan subway system in San Francisco. His music expanded from classical music to his own original work, and his form of self-expression, in his clothing, dancing, etc., became more and more upfront. Stefan's attitude on life made a complete 180, and he then decided to change his name to Thoth, from the Egyptian mythological messenger Thoth. Eventually, he formed a band, including a drummer, harpist, and bassist. But just as they were getting popular, they broke up, and Thoth was a one-man act again. Then, in the early 2000s, Thoth was evicted from his apartment in San Francisco and moved to New York. Several years later, Leela Angelique saw his performances in the Angel Tunnel in Central Park, and they decided to join forces.
That was one of the first things I wondered about him, and I was really shocked and impressed that this is all he did. And it makes perfect sense to me now because I can't do anything else.
Leela Angelique was born Caitlin Churchill Harkin in New York City in 1988, but grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. Both of her parents were professional musicians, and when she was in elementary school, she began taking violin lessons. But by the age of 10, she fell in love with opera, and at age 12, she began voice lessons. From that point on, Caitlin started placing in advanced choirs, and winning talent shows. She also played in many operas throughout high school. She attended University of Kentucky at Lexington for only 1 year and then dropped out, moving to New York City to study at Circle in the Square Theater School. One day, in 2008, Caitlin saw Thoth's performance and dropped out of theater school to become his musical partner.
When I first came to the park, I was extremely chaotic, and I had no focus at all. I really liked him, and I really liked what he was doing, and I would just scream after every song. I was so excited about what he was doing, and I couldn't control myself.
We both vocalize, accompany ourselves with violin, singing, and dance.
I went over to his apartment when I, was first playing with him, and I basically just tried things out, tried to play and sing at the same time, which is really hard still. And I used a different voice that I didn't use before, and a soprano mostly. And do you know what belting is?
Yeah.
Like Broadway belt is sort of like that. And I used that voice for the first time in front of somebody, and it really opened me up. And I still don't use it very much because I'm very focused on my classical singing. And then he said, "All right, we're going out now." And I was like, "Okay." It was maybe 2 times. And he said, "Okay, yeah, we can do this." And he was very ill, and he had tendinitis and a hernia and all this stuff. So the first day we went out together was very scary and weird and exciting and awesome. And I've not stopped since, so.
We perform outdoors in this space because it's free and people can freely encounter us. Whenever you play indoors and wherever you are in a venue, you are limited by the venue's proprietors who tend to limit who has access to that space for all sorts of reasons. For money reasons, because they want to have a ticket so certain people who can't afford it won't be able to go. Certain churches don't let certain other religions come in. Certain venues don't let other nationalities, races, or whatnot. Whereas outdoors, you're accessible to everybody.
We really try to focus on the eagle right there.
That's another focus.
It's really that's on top of us. That's what we're trying to emulate, to be angelic in how we're presenting ourselves and how we're behaving and how we behave towards others. So that's a really good focus right there. And it also is interesting for people because we're not looking at people, we're looking up there. People turn around and say, "What are they looking at?"
What's the most negative attention you've ever gotten before?
A guy started beating on my back with a skateboard. The most unlikely ally came up because everybody else watched it happen. And we're like, it's the usual thing in life. You watch somebody getting beaten and you go, oh, somebody's getting beaten up. Oh, it's not too bad. But in this case, this guy, and he was a Hell's Angel, and he was a skinhead who was fairly questionable in his own thing towards me, but he couldn't even tolerate to see this happen. For me, a walkabout is all about dealing with things and just going through it, and that for me was a test.
I would love to be in the tunnel forever. People come in and I feel my energy link with theirs and the energy increases. I want people to stay and listen and just be there because it helps me because I have more energy to move, because if there are more people in the tunnel, there's more energy that I move. Though I know that they're going to leave, I have to let them go. And that process is like death, that process is like grieving. because it is a loss, and loss is hard. And that process of letting them go is my work.
When I graduated, it was kind of like, you're kind of like being thrown to the dogs in a way. Because I wanted to perform, but unless you have a record deal where they're paying you, or you have a lot of connections, maybe you're playing in some kind of group that's already established, which I wasn't, you have to find your own way, and essentially that's what I've done.
Rex Hussmann was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. He grew up studying piano, eventually attending Berklee College of Music for his undergraduate degree. After Rex graduated, he decided to go to Ghana, Africa for 3 months, where he fell in love with the Gili.
This is called a Gili. It's from Ghana. It's made of wood, goat skin, and gourds. These gourds right here, and the white things are spider webs, or material from spider web silk. Basically, they cut holes in the gourds, and then they glue that material over the holes, and it resonates, amplifies the sound, and it buzzes, so it distorts. So you get kind of a buzzy sound.
Yeah.
Hear that, a little buzz? It's supposed to do that. So that's what your Gili, G-Y-I-L. I went to Ghana 6 years ago. Was there for 3 months, and I've been doing street performing on and off, but now in New York, I decided to do it full time. So I just started a couple months ago, but I paid my rent, and I plan on doing it for the rest of the year, and as long as I can sustain myself and keep growing. And I studied piano most of my life, but now I'm primarily into the Gili and singing. And I like to mix up a lot of different kinds of songs, like Johnny Cash, Bill Withers, The Clash, traditional Ghanaian music as well, the Smiths, whatever I can get my hands on that works.
Do you ever play your own music?
Oh, and my own music too, yeah.
Rex not only street performs, but is currently part of a band called the Rex Complex.
Hey, we're the Rex Complex.
The guy that I do the Rex Complex with is named Jeremy Gustin. He's a drummer from Boston, and I met him. We've been good friends now for almost 10 years, and we started the band together. I was experimenting with the Gili and traditional Ghanaian folk music and American folk music. So I had banjo and upright bass playing. Did a lot of country songs, you know, but this has such a cool sound, I wanted to try it. Mm-hmm. The Rex Complex is morphed into something completely different now. I don't even use the Gili anymore in that because it's kind of, it just doesn't fit anymore, mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
It's more like screaming and yelling and rolling around on the ground. I don't know. We're in Bushwick, Brooklyn right now, and it's where a lot of musicians and artists and writers and whatnot, those types of people are moving in right now. I was tired of living in Boston, and I wanted to move to a more exciting city, and New York was close by, and I always, you know, was curious about living in New York, and especially since there is such a huge music scene here. Yeah. I get more love on the street from people than I do in the clubs. I don't even get paid in the clubs in New York. It's just, there's so many bands, there's so many artists, people playing here that, like, when you go to a club, it's oversaturated with so many bands that are willing to play for free. That's when I decided I'm just gonna take it out to the street and see what happens, and I've been making more money doing that than any other job since I graduated 7 years ago. I've had a lot of jobs, a lot of shitty jobs too. But this, I mean, I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited. I'm paying my rent with music, able to save money for the first time in my life. It's so exciting.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. She's always gone.
When a subway is going by, how do you like keep concentrated? I don't know, that just seems really difficult.
You get used to it, of being out there. There's definitely this fear of, you know, when you set up, people are like, what is that? What is that thing? And what is he doing? I usually just make a little announcement like, hey, I hope y'all are having a good day. My name is Rex, this is a Chile, and I'm gonna play you a little Ghanaian traditional music right now, just to break the ice. A lot of times if you don't talk to people, they don't even, they'll ignore you. You have to really engage the audience, and that's, I think, one of the keys that why I'm doing well. I'm studying with a woman right now named Valerie Naranjo. She's the percussionist for Saturday Night Live band. She's a master of this instrument, and she was the one who told me, you need to have a rap, you need to talk to the audience. And because it'll triple your tips, and it's been great. I'm making on average $30 an hour right now. I make my own hours. I've been trying to get in about 20 hours a week. Usually that's about, it's like 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, which when you look at it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're performing, it's intense, and it takes a lot of energy. So 4 hours of performing a day actually adds up. You talk to people, you give them you engage them,
Yeah.
And I like to inform people of what I'm doing and what they can learn, too,
Oh.
I usually perform on the G train, the Metropolitan stop, the F train at 14th Street, Union Square. Half the problem is just trying to find a spot that is available. It's very competitive. Some people get into fights over who has this territory and that. And since I'm not as loud, I have had to kind of carve out my own little spots here and there. It's like fishing, you have to find a good spot. Someone might be in your spot.
Yeah. But do you get hassled by the police?
A lot of people do. I haven't yet because I'm not amplified. I don't make a loud ruckus. If you have an amplifier, generally the rule is, from what I've seen on their busking, street performing websites, that you have to have a permit and you have to apply for that, which can be a long process. But a lot of people just do it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay. What's like the best experience you've had thus far busking?
There's so many different kinds. I love it like when a group of kids will come by and they'll be like, same thing. What the hell is that? And you can feel this tension of like, are they gonna kick my xylophone? Are they gonna fuck with me? And then I rip into something, and then kids will just start dancing and going nuts. A lot of times, I love it when kids come by. That's usually my favorite. Is playing for kids, even though they don't tip. And just meeting people, you get a lot of, like I said, you get a lot of love from people. I have, at least, and it's been great. It's been supportive to my spirit and to my musicianship, because a lot of times it gets lonely being, working on your music and being a musician. Like any profession, you don't know it unless you do it, but I think on the outside people romanticize it and glamorize it, but it can actually be very lonely. And surprisingly, playing out on the street has connected me to people more and my music. It's great.
What's the worst experience you've had?
I guess one time this guy was trying to, he was telling me I need to give him money. I couldn't tell if how dangerous the guy was. Sometimes you just meet weird people on the street and you have to know how to handle yourself. And generally I just am pretty firm and tell them they need to, back off. because I'm working, you know, I'm not playing for fun. I mean, I enjoy what I do, but it's just like any work. You have to really work hard. So I was playing on this one track where it was the 6 train and the 4 and the 5 train on either side constantly during rush hour, and I couldn't hear myself, and it was just like, that's kind of a shitty feeling. I guess it's the overall feeling of just like, am I gonna make it? I gotta hustle hard, am I gonna make it? You know, because every time you go out there, there's the pressure of whether or not people are gonna dig your music and like you. So some days it feels like shit, but just, you know, overall it's good. Just gotta keep your spirits up.